Good to
Good
see
morning.
Jerry, Terry, Aparna. Aparna, where are you coming from?
Hey, I'm from Atlanta
Oh, nice.
and potentially to be in the board. So Kim invited me to learn more about the organization.
Cool.
Nice.
Have you met Alan Chan yet?
Uh, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. He's pretty big there at Atlanta. I don't know. He's taking a step back because he just got married, but
I think we had a Zoom call where I met most of the board members, but haven't had a chance to talk one on one yet.
oh, okay. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's see. Before we get started, one of the things we could do is give some time for people to come on their Asian clocks. We could start a little earlier with a little exercise that we do, just to allow us to hear more about some things that might be some challenges. So let me go ahead and do this. Let me throw up here for people in the chat box before we get started. What are some team challenges you face as a NAP leader? So go ahead and feel free to blow up that chat box. We just wanted to pull in here, what are the challenges that you tend to face as an app leader? Whether you've tried to put events together, whether you've tried to create this amazing training or a webinar, and we all face some challenges that we have. So what are some challenges that you face as a leader with your team? And then Joanne, I'll let you let us know when we're good to go.
Right. Yeah, let's get started. So then that way you guys have more time. Thank you all for joining this session. So my name is Joanny Yang. I have the honor of introducing our speakers today, Abraham and Jim. So Abraham is currently the CEO of Jin Consulting Group. He serves his clients in business strategy, culture, leadership, and digital marketing. He's also the co-founder of Bespoke. He's also a Giant TV speaker and consultant for Giant Worldwide, a global leadership firm. One of the ways that he serves in his community is that he's the founder of LinkedIn Local KC, and in his vast experience, he has led leaders in companies like Google, Tesla, T-Mobile, and many others. Today, he has his other co-founder, Jim. Jim has Jim's leadership experience merges from traditional large corporation top-down management. During his 11 years working for several Fortune 10 telecommunication company, he strove to bring the best out of his team through empowering and organizational health. Jim currently enjoys multiplying positive team culture and changing the way people lead using the Bespoke platform as a way for leadership transformation. So at this time, I'm gonna hand it over to Jim and Abraham. See, they got the chat room started. So if you have any questions, feel free to put it in there and we'll filter it out and make sure they address that at the end of the presentation. All right, Abraham and Jim, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joanny. Abraham, I'm looking at these answers here, and it's no surprise that a lot of these things that I'm reading are very similar to the experiences that I've had outside of NAP. And Abraham, what are some things that came to your mind as you were reading those responses? Oh, can't hear you.
I think it's not even a NAP leadership kind of issue that's unique to them, but I think it's almost like every leader is dealing with how do you get more engagement from their people? How do you recruit for people for just building up their leadership pipeline? How do you create more exciting programs in light of the remote scenario? I think these are all just common things that every leader is also facing right now as well.
Yeah, I see engagement's a challenge, getting more people to participate. sometimes even getting feedback of hearing what the people want. And as leaders, we all want to serve the people that are part of our organization, but sometimes the challenges can be that people don't, right? People aren't. And so what I'd like for you to do is, people just to stay engaged, and take a moment to read through what we're doing. And in today's presentation, what we want to do is give you an opportunity to look at how we see these issues. They're common, right? It's a human condition. And what I'd like for you to do is just take a look at your situation from a different lens. And a tool that we like to do is use the 5 voices. It's a signature leadership type of conversation that we tend to have without even knowing it, and help us to see things not only from the perspectives as us as leaders, but as well as the perspective of the people that we are trying to lead. And so what I'd like for you to do is just really quickly to know, Abe and I have been doing this for a while, as Joanne mentioned. Abe's got 4 kids. He's got his handful. And, for me, I've got one little daughter. She's 3 years old. And, the common things that we face as leaders at NAP are actually probably the same things that we follow at home. Try to get engagement with our kids. How do you get engagements with our partners? How do you get engagement, hear the feedback that we need? Because for me as a dad, I'm trying to do the best for them, right? I'm not trying to be selfish or try to do something just for my own gain. But Abraham, tell me a little bit about your challenges that you face similarly at home.
Yeah, I think the people issues of leadership is all the same, whether it's in our home life or in our work life, right? And learning to actually lead with influence versus positional leadership is ever much so more important nowadays. And I believe that we need to learn how to actually influence without actually leveraging always our competency or our position altogether. And I think that's such an important way of leading both from the inside out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I know it's hard with us all being in Zoom, and some of us are in peculiar areas. But if you can, go ahead and try to engage with us. We're going to ask you just as much, engage with us, help us to do a better job of making this relevant. So if you can, blow up the chat box with questions that you have. Joanne's mining them and making sure that we address the questions that you might have. If you can, take yourself turn your camera on, take yourself off mute when we ask questions, because we want this to be an engaging and interactive. It's interesting times. So it's always not easy for us to interact. You're probably going to hear my dog in the background, right? This is what today is. But take the moment, introduce yourself. You might find some people that are in a similar chapter that you haven't had a chance to meet yet. But the questions that we want you to think about are, how can you apply this, and what are your challenges to actually try some of the things that we're encouraging you to do? So, Abraham, we're not creating this out of a vacuum, right? We work with a lot of other Asian ERGs. And what are the things that you might have found as we go over these things that are very common to these other ERG clients that we have?
Yeah, I think one of the things that a big part of leadership is just self-awareness, and knowing how your voice sound and the voice of those around you is such an important thing. And I think when it comes to working with specific affinity groups, what we find a lot of times is that when you have the like-minded people around you, sometimes that could create a homogenous voice, or it could actually lead into a place of insecurity because you're not able to have your own differing voice within the rest of the majority. And so we're always working with leaders and helping them to find, how can you find unity together in the things that you could celebrate in your culture, but actually be able to create uniqueness within it, where you could celebrate the diverse voices within your leadership, to be able to create more secure, confident leadership that has the full spectrum of the voices that might be not necessarily always what is the common thought sentiment of the whole group.
Yeah, I'm sure as leaders, sometimes we might all feel like we have a certain view of what maybe the Asian leadership challenges are and the landscape that we're in. And then sometimes we feel like the people that we're serving just don't see things the same way. But the reality is we're all facing the same challenges. We're the most educated, but we're the least represented when it comes to leadership. And for us that are serving at NAP as a part of NLA, we tend to find the same challenges that maybe our leaders see with us. So how do we turn that landscape around? How do we see these things a little bit different? And Abraham, can you share us what that might actually look like?
Yeah, when we look at our current leadership landscape at this moment, what we find is that 60% of teams in general are not really, are kind of walking their true potential. So there's a lot of gap in regards to opportunity for their growth and our team performance. And this is a statistic just for general population, but I wonder at times with the unconscious biases that we face as Asian leaders, and not necessarily always feeling like we have a voice naturally. I find that these statistics might be even a little bit more shaded in the more detriment level for ourselves. And goals can be unrealized due to resources inefficiency, and burnout could actually occur because teams are not walking in their full capacities. Another statistic to kind of think about is that 82% of team members feel misunderstood and undervalued. And there could be a sense of low engagement altogether. And so this is a statistic that we actually find in regards to just the general population. There is, out of the 5 voices, there's 2 voices that tend to dominate and not really allow other voices to be fully heard. And I often find, hey, if this is how we feel in a general population, how much more if there's a layer of unconscious bias, microaggressions or macroaggression, whatever you want to call that, and that we may not fully feel safe to actually share our authentic leadership voice. Jim, as you look at some of these statistics, what are your thoughts, and have you seen this to be a reality out in your landscape?
Oh, absolutely. And just as everybody else chatted when we first started, I think these are the things that people said, right? Low team engagement.
Yep.
How many of you have found burnout where I've seen chapters have huge overhauls where the president steps down, everyone steps down, and then the chapter's in danger of becoming dissolved, and then new people have to restart up again. People hearing things that they thought was going to be an awesome event, they put it together, no one shows up, right? If you've had these type of things happen to you, that's what we want you to see is take a look at it from a different perspective, maybe. We would be insane to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. But one of the things we want you to be able to maybe see for the first time is why this is happening. Why are leaders different from followers, and really put ourselves from a follower's perspective, right? And as leaders really hear the things that they're saying, get them more engaged, because we can be fine-tuned to the things that they're talking about. So as we go over these type of objectives today, what we want you to do is really listen to the people that we have. So Abraham, go over some of these objectives that we have.
Yeah. As you think about understanding the 5 voices leadership, we're going to help you to understand, hopefully, a clear understanding of your natural tendencies and your current leadership reality with more of an objective lens. We want to help you to gain self-awareness. We want to be able to help you to discover your leadership voice and your preferred way of communicating. And we want to make sure that as you think about change, because you're navigating with tons of change in light of the COVID situation, right? Whether you want it or not, you have to navigate it. And how do we do it more effectively?
And so as you look at these things, we're going to use a personality test called the 5 voices, but we don't want today to be about a personality test for you. We just want you to see the commonalities of certain leadership personalities and how they tend to conflict from really hearing what other people want. And so, as we look at the chat box that we had earlier today and all the things that you said, the team challenges that you're really facing are a part of this reality, right? And we have this little tool to maybe help you to back calculate why that reality is the way it is. So if you take your reality and then you were to go, let's say, clockwise on this, we can say that our reality is a consequence of things that we do. But the things that we do tend to be based on a blind spot based upon how leaders tend to think. And what you might not be aware of is that your personality as a leader, someone that's a go-getter, someone that wants to really help your community, it's really different from the way that the non-leaders are, the participants are. You have those people that come out to free events, but they won't pay for a membership. Anybody have that type of an issue, right? Anybody have people that come out, but then when it comes to doing something that you really believe is a passion for your board, they don't come out, right? What we say is there's some hidden things that we're not able to see that is a cause. And if we could help you to know yourself and those tendencies a little bit better, I think you can lead in a different way that you'll find more people to follow. Abraham, what are some things that in this tool that you like to pull out for them as well?
I think it's so important as leaders to know our current reality and to be able to audit and see it objectively. Number one, I think that's so important. And it's about having self-awareness and creating the safety for people to give you the right feedback, both qualitative and quantitatively, to share with you what is the current situation right now. And as you do that, I think it's so important to not point fingers at people. It's really important to actually take ownership of your tendencies. Like if you're aware of your own leadership voice, what you'll start to do is, okay, I can't change other people always, but you know what? I can take ownership, and the fastest change can be done by taking the ownership of my own tendencies. And I think as leaders, if we actually take that proactive approach and ownership of our own tendencies, then we can start to identify even the patterns of our natural ways of doing things. And as we do that, we're going to be able to make better action points towards a better preferred future. And I think if we actually just have that mindset all together, we're going to be leaders who are humble, hungry, leaders who know ourselves, to truly lead ourselves in a way that could potentially bring breakthrough in your situation.
So just highlighting here, right, the realities that we face as leaderships. This is common, right? A lot of people share these things. We saw that in the statistics before we even pulled this information, right? This is a common thing that leaders face. And what we want you to see is how your tendency as just being in a leadership position, maybe in Asian culture where we tend to respect authority, meaning that it tends to be things that we do out of compliance. And sometimes that might be some passive microaggressive behavior that we expect from the people that follow. And so all these consequences that we have and actions that we do really come from understanding what type of a leadership culture that we bring from, right? And so when we said earlier that we use like a personality test, we don't want you to see this as your personality, but it's the personality type of most leaders as a culture. And so what we use is the 5 voices, and there's distinctive things that we should be aware of that help us to be able to acknowledge what are those things that we tend to elevate our role with and how it might lead to more compliance rather than engagement. So Abraham, can you walk us through these 5 voices?
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, it's going to be the nurture. Nurture has the medical kit. They really care about the people around them, right? Others might actually engage in all about the transaction, getting the work done, but the nurtures are thinking the organization and their team as, this is my family. And how can I make sure that everyone is healthy? Notice their decibel of their force of impact and how they impose their voice is really at level 1. And so that means that they don't always impose their agenda to other people because their preference for others and their love for harmony and relationships is so high that sometimes they're not going to bring that healthy challenge that is needed at times. But they are champion of people, right? Relational harmony and values. They are representing 43% of the population. That's a large percentage. When you think about it, that's actually the majority of, out of the 5 voices, they actually represent the majority. But what happens when the majority is one of the quietest voice within the spectrum of the 5 voice framework?
We don't tend to see natural nurturer voices in the leadership space because they don't want to impose their thoughts or beliefs onto other people. A lot of you here might feel like you're nurturers, but anytime you're trying to push what you think is best for somebody else, that is not nurturing. So if the quietest voices are in your constituency and they don't feel safe to tell you something because you might suggest certain things before you've actually pulled to hear honest feedback on a blank canvas, then you're missing out on a potential 43% of the people that want to engage, but they don't feel safe to engage. What's the next voice, Abraham?
Yeah, we've got the creative. You see the telescope there, and they may, for some leaders, they may like, oh, we're focusing on this current issue right now within this quarter. They're like, no, not this quarter. I'm looking at second quarter and looking at the fourth quarter. I'm looking at literally 2 to 5 to even 10 years ahead, right? They're not just looking at just the current micro details of things. So creatives are outside the box thinkers. They have a level 2 when it comes to their force of impact, and it's still quiet because they tend to have a lot of creative ideas and they hold it tight to their chest because it's part of who they are, and they're perfectionistic. So sometimes they don't want to always share it. And so one of the biggest learnings for creatives is that they need to learn how to share their things, even if it's like 60% half baked. They're like, they need a good, healthy feedback loop for it to have the 1.0, the 2.0, the 3.0 iterations. But creatives in general, they're really great at giving you many different ideas, future trend like setters, and actually early adopters in general. And as a result, they're able to see things way ahead of the curve, both the opportunities and the threats. And sometimes it's hard for them to fully communicate that because the rest of the people may not get it because they don't get what they're seeing all the time. And so sometimes they feel a little bit misunderstood. Again, champion of future ideas, innovation, and organizational integrity. They have a huge desire for social justice, and they see the marginalized, and they want to fight for the big why and the meaning and the purpose in life. They represent 9% though, and one of the most future-oriented voice.
And creatives, interestingly enough, they tend to be in a lot of these leadership panels, right? They're in the leadership teams. They're in these areas where they're constantly being looked to say, hey, things didn't work last year the way we wanted it, so let's look at out of the box ways that we can change things. And you can see these two voices might diametrically oppose each other. Maybe not completely, but at times you can find that if nurturers like things the way they were, and they don't like change and they don't like feeling uncomfortable, but the creative is always saying, hey, what can we do better? Let's up it a notch. Let's make this like, oh my gosh, we can do so much more with what we have. Then the nurturer is going to feel like, well, I liked it the way it was. Why are you changing things on me, right? And then you might find those members that are leaving slowly in this exodus are probably feeling a little bit uncomfortable, right, in what they do, and they don't like discomfort. Next, we have another voice, and this one's another majority that you find. Tell us about the Guardian.
Yeah, so you notice the shield there. The shield represents the sense of wanting to bring safety to the rest of the people. So they're going to be always protecting their system, right? If you are messing around with their timeline scope and budget and their policies and their SOPs, they're like, don't touch it because I love it and it's sacred, right? And they literally have to make sure that they guard that, make sure it's consistent. Whatever they promise, they will want to deliver. And sometimes like a nickname that we give Guardians, I like to say they're like the Sentinel or like the cruise missile. If you give them a coordination of certain things they need to execute, they will execute, right? They will make sure that the micro detail and the details of execution will be done to, and all the T's will be crossed, all the I's will be dotted. Now, notice that there's level 3 when it comes to their decibel of force of impact. They'll come into the middle of the conversation, in the leadership conversation, and they'll say, hey, you guys talked about a lot of fluffy stuff right now. What practically do we need to do right now? What's my action plan, right? What practically are the next steps? That's what they're dying to say. And they're going to be interrogating all of these visionary kind of like, inspiring type of conversationists and say, hey, we need some practical outcomes here, right? They're champions of due diligence, resources, efficient systems, and processes. They represent, like what Jim said, 30% of the population. So I like to say nurturers and guardians are kind of like pillars of the society and the community, because nurturers tend to be this very loyal, supporting kind of presence of friendship always with the people that they're serving. And then the guardians are always consistent and bring execution and bring stability in the operations of the organization on the detailed consistency.
Yeah, so these guardians, again, they're a 30% of it, but they don't like change also. So if you're a leader that's coming and said, hey, I've got great ideas for us and we're gonna have to make some changes, you might have lost 73% of the population right there, just naturally. It's one of those things that you might find. What about the connector voice?
Yeah, connectors, if you notice that little network of things, they love social media. They love to be externally focused. They're not just thinking internally. They want to be able to engage outside with creating strategic partnerships of people. They're champions of relational networks, collaboration, effective communication. Notice the force of impact of their voice is at level 4. They usually are always being heard within the table, and they're kind of the life of the party. They have this vibe of positivity that really infiltrates the room and that really allows people to feel connected. Chemistry is their gift set. They know how to pull people in. They feel like they can quickly make friends with people. And they're all about, hey, let's do this together. Let's not do this by ourselves. And they're all about creating teams and cross collaboration. They represent about 11% of the population, and they are also future oriented.
Yeah, and one of these things about connectors, and I'm a connector too, as Noelle's shared, she's a connector. They tend to actually occupy a lot of leadership teams. They tend to be the loudest voice that you hear audibly. But they also tend to be the ones that really can rub nurturers and guardians the wrong way. And one of the things that, because connectors love a lot of people, they tend to overpromise and underdeliver. And over time, you might find people have a tendency to get maybe disenfranchised with how things are going, especially with the changes that are happening. And so people start slipping away. Abraham, what about the pioneer?
Pioneer likes to see a mountain and a project of great impact, and they want to put a flag on it, right? They want to actually conquer it. And they bring a lot of strength and this, oh, we can win, we can do this. And they'll drive their team to the bottom lines of things. Notice they're at red line when it comes to their force of impact of their voice. So if they're not careful, they can actually really blow people away and sometimes dominate the conversation if they're not careful. It's not their desire to destroy people per se. It's just really this sense of like, they know how to align people and resources to win the war. And they are seeing this thing very systematic and very strategically. And if they're not careful, sometimes they're not allowing other voices to be heard. They're champions of strategic vision, result-focused, and problem solving. And they are 7% of the population. They are great, brilliant thinkers when it comes to hard problems. And if you say you can't do it, they're like, I'll prove you wrong, and I know how to do it, right? They'll be very resilient, they'll pivot, and they'll figure out a way to make it happen.
And so this pioneering spirit, you know, that grit, the people that just get things done, sometimes can make people feel like tasks, right? And it really starts creating a negative team type of a feel, so to speak. Again, we all as leaders have a tendency to inherit this pioneer spirit. Some of us naturally, but some of us, maybe it's one of those things that we expect. You know, that tiger mom can come out, so to speak, right? So we want to give you a little bit of a breakout room and take 3 minutes to process what we shared. Which voice do you tend to elevate in your current leadership role? Toomey might be a connector naturally. Noelle's a connector naturally. But at some point, you might feel like, you know, I might have to be a little bit of a guardian. And so where Helen's asking, like the guardian, they tend to be, again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but let's get it done. The pioneer is more like, pioneer gets whatever new is done and do things in a bigger and better way. So those might be some of the challenges to answer your question that you might be facing. But take a moment, just think about it, process for 3 minutes. We'll give you a chance. You'll have 2 minutes of actual time and then 1 minute of coming back. All right, so we'll see you soon. All right, we got Sherry. I think everyone's in a room, but it looks like, is it Sherry or Sherry? There she goes. All right, cool. What are your thoughts so far?
This is going pretty well, and this is great content. I'm listening as I'm like trying to be admin in the background. I'm listening and I'm taking this in, and thanks for answering my question.
Oh yeah. There's like a lot of stuff back here that we're trying to answer questions. Totally.
And you guys got back to back, and Joannie's moderating this one, but Mila will be moderating the next, so she'll be reintroducing you guys.
Okay, cool. And we'll probably stick with the same format. Man, as soon as we started, a delivery guy peeked in my office window and was like trying to talk to me. That's why you saw me doing this.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Montreal is going crazy. It's just,
That totally would be when he would come, right when you
Yeah.
were starting.
yeah.
That's the best, right?
And I just wanted him to ring the door so my parents would get it. But he was like trying to talk to me. He's like, what do you want me to do? I was like, just go. And he thought I was going to meet him there, but he didn't ring the doorbell. Oh,
Yeah.
I should have left the shade down. I've had deliveries always. The only guy that actually does that too. So I think
Alright.
time-wise, we got 10 minutes, Abraham. We're gonna probably have to zoom through this, and I think the rest are just chat exercises. Welcome back, people.
So let's actually start to share maybe which voices do you feel like in this season that you have to elevate at this moment? Can you guys lean into the chat room and maybe pick which voice you feel like in this current season that you had to elevate?
Got 10 more seconds, so everybody makes it back. But yeah, take a moment for those that are back. Which voices do you feel like you have to elevate, and why did you pick that voice? So welcome back. Again, which voice did you feel like you tend to elevate in your leadership role, especially in this season, and why? And Abraham's going to kind of go a little bit more on the science behind why certain voices tend to alienate others. A lot of times as leaders, we have a vision, right? We come in with a plan. It's not like any of us tend to come in and I'm going to spend the first 30 days just meeting everybody one-on-one, asking them what they want, taking polls. A lot of us feel like we know what the people want and we have great visions of what other people are doing, and we have an agenda that we tend to push to other people. And that vision that we see for the chapter that we're leading tends to create change, right? We're talking about this concept of change. So Abraham, share a little bit about the voices and how we tend to communicate vision based on those tendencies.
Yeah, you know, when we look at just when it comes to situations, especially in the season of like having to do a lot of changes, imagine that you have to be innovating, you have to be early adopting, you have to even drive that change within your organization. For some of you, what you'll probably have found in your journey of in this season of COVID, you may have actually had to elevate your creative voice, your pioneering voice, and more of a connector voice. Now, that's really interesting because when you think about it, naturally the creative connector and pioneer voices are the early adopting voices. They tend to be the ones who adopt the vision first, or adopt the technology first, or adopt new practices first. And what you'll find is that if you were a guardian nurture by nature, right? Let's say your baseline natural voice, your natural strength of your voice is guardian nurture, it may have been very stressful for you, right? To actually always have to be forced to do new practices and new things that you didn't want to do. And so naturally in this time, if you felt like that was a dynamic for yourself, you probably feel very stressed at that moment. For those of you who naturally feel like you are connector, creative, and pioneer naturally, and you have to elevate it in these times, you may feel like, hey, it's tough, but it's kind of fun, and I'm kind of in my element, right? And I'm having to adapt new things. And so your voice may feel like it's being energized potentially, and you may be able to feel like you're bringing a lot of value into the organization. Now, every voice in general, though, has a unique strength that they can bring in this season, but you'll find that because of the unique global landscape that we're actually experiencing right now, requiring us to actually change and adapt so fast, and there's really no like choice at all with regards to our adaptation rate, it has a unique element that we're all facing at this moment. Jim, what do you think about all that?
You know, this helped me to really understand what was going on in the back of the brain, right? Like if a lot of you I saw were pioneers, a lot of connectors. I didn't see a lot of people that felt as they were really on the nurture side, the most popular one. And it really helps you to see this tension that's pulling across from the leadership as well as those following. Now here's a more vivid image. Abraham, can you kind of walk us through this as well?
Yeah, as we think about change, one of the most important things is to realize what is your natural voice? What is your current real voice? Not something that you aspire to be, not what you want to be, or what even your role requires you to be. What is your voice right now? Because it's very important to know with self-awareness who you are. And then from there, you can't be everything. You need to have a good advisory group. And this advisory group, if we're not careful, guess what? We end up recruiting people who are like us. We often influence people that are like us because people have chemistry with people who are very similar to us. And so we have to be careful, because if we're not good at recruiting and seeing the gift in other people, we may just only get a very slanted voice leadership tendency, right? And so it's very important to have an advisory group that is actually 5-voiced, especially in the areas of your weaker voices, right? You want to make sure you have people in your advisory group that can help shape the areas that you don't have. Because if you then are able to get their voice, it's going to shape the way you communicate to the rest of the organization, as well as what? If you're a pioneer and you have a nurturer as part of your advisory group, it's far better to get a nurturer to communicate to other nurturers, because they know how to communicate in a way that actually gets them, right? And so at times it's about empowering different voices to recruit and build out strategic partnerships and engagement, because some people and some voices may not match with your natural voice, and you may need to actually create a team of people to help serve your overall objectives. But what if it's not done correctly? Sometimes what happens, we just kind of focus self-centrically on our own voice. We don't care about making a good 5-voice team, and as a result, we start to create silos and turf wars. And it's because we're coming from our own perspective without actually valuing the voices of others.
Yeah, and so without knowing it, you might be creating this type of a chasm between the mindset of the leaders and the mindset of those who are following. The mindset of the leaders like, hey, we're gonna make it happen. I don't care how big the challenge is, but we're gonna do it. We learned not to fail. In fact, we learned to not even get an A-, right? Like A- is an Asian F. Our goal is to make it happen. But unfortunately, what you might create is this chasm between yourself and the other people. And it's our job as leaders to really serve our people, then understand where they're coming from so that we can build this bridge from where they are to where we want to take them. And a lot of times, as we learned, us as leaders, we're going to be going way further than everybody else feels comfortable to do. So we say, scale it back. Let there be a building year. Let there be a trust year. Let there be a year where you're creating a bridge so that people can follow you. So here's some quick tips that we want to give you as a way to be able to handle this, okay? So here's a screenshot that you all can steal. But Abraham, why don't you lead through these 7 points and just help people to understand why are these so important?
Yeah, these are some points that I think could be insights on how to build better bridges to your membership. So a lot of times your members may say, hey, you're really good at the wow, and you can inspire us on the big vision, but we need to know and hear the how, right? We've heard it all before. We don't want the inspiration vision. We want to be able to see the practical roadmap and how to actually walk this out. Start with the why. What happens if we don't? What happens if we do? What happens to the guys who did, right? And as people are often, what you'll find, if a lot of the voices around you, or especially even guardians and nurturers around you, you need to make sure that you need to be able to explain all of the details of it, because the more data that we give them, the more safely they're going to be able to follow you across that chasm that we showed you. Don't do it to us, do it with us. We want to know you will feel our pain and what you plan to do about it. And so really always surfacing, I know in NAP you guys do lots of feedback surveys and quantitative and qualitative opportunities to really pull for your membership. It's always great to have that so that it can help shape making decisions moving forward. Help us picture ourselves in your vision. Now, when you vision cast, guess what? You have to understand if they're more present oriented or future oriented. Because if you are future oriented and you're like a connector, creative pioneer naturally, and you're just going for it and you're sharing vision, guess what? You're being irrelevant to those present oriented voices, the guardians and nurturers. And if, vice versa, if you're very guardian nurture and you're very present oriented, those visionary people that you need to engage with, you need to share the big picture in a way that actually explains their why. And so understand how to actually share the story in a way that makes sense to them versus what you prefer to talk. Value and affirm the contribution we bring. Acknowledge your own tendencies and empower others to communicate the vision. Meaning, we talked about how other voices sometimes may be better in bringing credibility and chemistry with those majority if their voice actually matches the membership majority, right? So you have to be able to kind of surface out and see what is the voices in your leadership table, and how can you actually challenge and empower them to speak to actually get the greatest engagement of the whole organization. Remain sensitive to the pace of change. Don't press the gas. Help us to take our foot off the brake. And so again, if you notice that people are resisting, or they're not talking, or they're not engaging, or they're pushing the brakes, ask the why. Like, ask them, hey, what's going to allow you to let go of the brakes? What do you need? Run a pilot project whenever you can. Always a small case study will always do, will help with the sense of adoption rate, right? As they see it being a credible thing, a safe thing, and from there, being able to scale from there is always a great approach moving forward.
Yeah, and I'd love for each one of you to think about some of these things that you haven't been doing. I know it takes longer to get things done, but your leadership will be a lot more scalable. It'll be a lot more simplified for people can follow along. And what you'll find is also the leadership's a lot more sustainable, because over the long haul, you'll have more people, more hands in the pot to help you to get things done. So in the chat room, which of these 7 do you feel like you're going to try to incorporate with what you do so that you could become a lot more influential with what you have? So I'll go back, because I know a lot of you guys are reading this. I try to pick which of these that you're going to do. Now, I know that these 45-minute sessions are no way going to transform your leadership. And the reality is that we're too busy to really get the help we need to implement some of these things. So what NAP LA and NAP Kansas City has done is we partnered with them together to create what we call the NAP cohort. It's something that they've sponsored to really help a lot of you to see these things, and it's a 4-month program. It takes time, because a lot of you were created with how many years it took to be where you are today. But we want to do things is to help you to be able to join us and go through with other NAP leaders, other NAP board leaders as well, to really understand, to see these tendencies to face your reality. So take a screenshot on this. If you are a board member, email us. We'll give you a discount, because we really want you to start using this. And you'll find that we have about 4 to 5 different NAP board leaders, chapter leaders that have gone through this program. And it's really changed the way that they approach things to be more inclusive with the people that they want, help them to take more people along with them, and really creates less burnout with what you do. Abraham, is there anything else that you wanted to share about this?
Yeah, I just want to just share that if you are a board member, we're going to give you even additional discount beyond this as well. So please reach out to us at info@bespokellc.com. We want to make sure that, especially the board members who are shaping it, you guys are investing so much. We want to make sure that cost is not even an issue. It's really a way for us to give back into the community. NAP's been an awesome champion of the Asian community, and we want to be able to partner with you guys in that way.
And then I know it's like right at 10:45, but if you have any questions, we can stay behind. We have one more session after this. Hopefully you can join us. And if you're going to join us for the next Multiplying Leader sessions, stick around. We're not changing channels. So it'd be great to have you there. Otherwise, feel free to shoot us an email on questions about our presentation also. And we're more than happy to answer this. You know, our goal is to partner with NAP, you know, really help elevate us to be not only in those leadership seats in these nonprofit volunteer organizations, but we want to show you how to transfer them into your actual work. We find a lot of NAP leaders, they have great titles at NAP, but they don't have the commensurate titles in your 9-to-5 vocations, right? And we really want to bridge that gap for you. And that's our goal. We're going to use this program to help you bridge those gaps. And a lot of the people that go through these programs, they accomplish goals. And you can see in the testimonials on the website of how a lot of people that go through this, they get promotions. They finally get the raises. They finally get the things that they're looking for, because they see these through the eyes of their leadership as well as the people that they lead. All right. But yeah, any other questions, feel free to come off off mute and ask. We'll be sticking around for a while.
Yeah, thank you, Abraham and Jim. At this time, we did put into the chat box to go back to the main room. There's a break session happening, so go there, and then you're welcome to come back after that break, or you can just stay here with them. That's fine too.
Thank you, Kayla.
One thing we can do that we were requested to do, if we can momentarily take the share off so we can take a collective photo of all the pictures here. Let's see. All right, everyone put your best face on.
Get those smiles there.
Yeah, hit those smiles, show those pearly whites. All right, got it. Thank you. And thanks again to Abraham and Jim for this session. Thanks to Joannie for moderating, and thanks you all for attending. Stick around for their next session or hop on over to the in-between activity. Jim and Abraham are happy to take more questions or just chat with you about other leadership topics.
I didn't see any questions come across, but I think we answered some of them that were.
I just kind of wanted to share, since I learned about Five Voices through actually the Asian Chamber here in Kansas City had invited Abraham to speak, and that was my first awareness. And I just know that when we did the convention, it was very plain to me that the core leaders were creative, pioneer, and a connector. And I think once I recognized that, it really brought out the value of the voices. Yes, the Guardian drove me crazy, but also part of the team to make sure we stayed on track. And so I just think this is a very valuable tool as leaders, that we recognize one another's voice, and then it becomes, you understand, oh, I mean, that's how they lead. And so you can appreciate it instead of feel criticized. And the same thing for yourself. Then you know that's my weakness. Yeah. That is my quieter voice. It's there, but it's quieter inside me. And I need that other voice to speak up to keep the whole team collaborative and moving forward. So as a connector, I've really practiced being quieter to let others step up and lead. And that's a challenge for me. Yeah. But I just really feel the value of I've not been too faithful to the cohort because of other things happening in my life, but it is extremely valuable. And I have made new friends through it, and it's really been supportive, especially during 2020 and all the things that we've gone through as leaders and even as members, supporting one another.
Yeah, it was really fun to just listen in. I think as you guys were kind of closing your eyes, and someone was kind of facilitating, hey, we're part of a team. We need to value each other. We can't see each other as competition. We have to see each of the voices in the way it is and what they contribute. And how can we actually do it together so we can win together, right? And I think sometimes being able to see that the uniqueness and the nuance and seeing the ability to honor every single voice on the table is really difficult, especially under distress, right? Under normal situations, it's a little bit easier, but even more in even remote scenarios. So there requires a lot more intentionality to be able to lead yourself and to identify people right away, especially in a nonprofit situation. You're dealing with tons of volunteers, right? They're not doing this for their full-time job. And so it's so important to be able to develop that keen sense, but develop your personal voice and to see what are the things that are undermining your influence. And our hope is that through this cohort, we can help you to become that very thing that your leadership and your board should be able to embody and exemplify. And we believe that as you do that, you can start to create a great volunteer force that will be fitting in regards to their role, so that they won't be burnt out. They'll actually have a right fit in regards to what they're doing. And our hope is that your change that you're leading is going to be not alone or without awareness, but that you're going to be able to be more intentional in the process as you engage it. It is an art and science in how you go about doing it. And not everyone can get that right away. And so that's why we believe in creating a cohort, a community that's able to help each other out, learn and share best practices, and move towards a better future together.
Hi, I have a quick question. So thank you for the really informative session. I think a question that came up for me is, how do you sort of, balance the drive and initiative that you require to actually realize a vision that you have, but also making sure that other people's ideas are respected. And I think this contention becomes the most apparent for me when there comes a time to actually make a decision. And sometimes it's really hard for me to sort of sit back and not try to push forward my vision, even if I think it is right or effective and whatnot. So yeah, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, to give you more specific, Ginny, which voice did you feel like you resonated the most out of all the voices naturally?
I think creative resonated the most with me. Yeah.
So Ginny, one of the leadership kind of struggles of a creative is they have so much vision for the future, right? Especially when people don't have any vision, you're like, I have a lot of ideas, right? But what's often hard though is because you're such an early adopting ability to see solutions and change is so clear ahead of the curve. Sometimes the rest of the people can't see the bridge and the connection points to it. So what we often try to help creative leaders is, hey, take your ideas, don't try to just communicate it with words, try to document it, try to put it into a visual way, try to put a roadmap in it where they can kind of see themselves in that change, right? And if you can help make sure that the rest of the membership gets to shape that roadmap together, you're going to get far more engagement in that process. Does that resonate with you, Jenny?
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Like the bridge analogy, Jenny, would be is you're more than willing to jump across that bridge to make it happen because you've taken the time, especially as a creatives tend to be introverted, that they've fleshed it out. They thought it through. Like you went through all the combinations of permutations of where you are today and how to get to where you need to go. But nobody else was along with you on that ride to think that through. And they haven't calculated all the risks and rewards that you've already done for them. And it's complicated, right? And to communicate that is really hard. So the tendency would be for you not to take that time to communicate that with them. And so what it seems like is you're pushing all these ideas onto them, but not taking the time for them to go on that journey by pulling it, right? And that's what you were saying, creating a safe space for them to speak first before you take the time to respond with your solution and make sure it's a good fit. So I'll use an example, like when I go to Nordstrom's, I don't know if you do this, but it kind of kills me. I go there, ask for one pair of shoes. This guy brings back 10 pairs of shoes. I'm like, no, that is not what I'm thinking about. What about this? What about this? What about this? And I feel like, no, I just want that shoe that I wanted. And if that one doesn't fit, can you bring me out this other one? He never gave me that space to do it. And I'm like annoyed because this 30-minute situation takes like an hour because he's constantly bringing all these shoes and all these people in the back of the room, right? I don't know if you've ever had that issue happen, but that's what it could seem like for those quieter voices in a way that, hey, I just wanted to come and see if I could meet some people. Oh yeah, you know what? You could meet people. We have networking events. We have all these events, and then we're going to do the Dragon Boat Fest. Hey, by the way, do you want to help us? What do you do? Like, it becomes this attack. And for us, it's like, why wouldn't you? Because that's something that we as leaders would want. But for them, it's like, I just wanted to meet other Asians, like I just moved here, like, and we don't meet them where they are.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. That analogy was quite helpful.
Next time you go to Nordstrom's.
Ben's laughing because he's like, I think I resonate with that.
Hey guys, Jim and Abraham, as we are almost time for the 11 o'clock session, I did want to introduce you guys to our new moderator. You might see her there, Mila. She will be reintroducing you guys to everyone who steps into our next session. I want to say 11 a.m., but I'm Pacific. I'm West Coast time, so I don't want to
West
confuse
Coast.
that. But in 4 minutes till, we'll have her reintroduce you to everyone who rejoins us after the in-between session activity that's going on right now, which I kind of forgot what it was. Junan or anyone else, do we know what is currently going on right now? It's not the boba thing, right? It's that was earlier.
I believe it's a networking session over your career.
Okay. Yeah, there's always something going on, but